Hi, welcome to Neilson Dynasty. If I'm still up on YouTube, that is. Like, share, and subscribe. Be kind, helpful, grateful. Buy silver and platinum. And watch this interesting report on Africa. More specifically, Ethiopia, which I have been kind of fascinated with since I started my YouTube. Oh, actually, before I started my YouTube channel. But one of my first 20 or 30 reports was on Ethiopia because I know the significance of that country. And here is another indicator that other world leaders for centuries, that is correct, for centuries agree with Neil. And I'll prove it. Again, I always prove what I have to say.
Nations were at one point either colonized or the colonizer. It seems quite a mystery how some regions remained untouched by this crucial era of the past. And it's especially surprising to find that there were actually some areas in Africa that remained untouched by the Portuguese, British, Spanish, French, Belgian, and Italian colonial powers,
Not conquered or colonized.
Simultaneous goals of expanding their empires. Of the few and far between,
that's the only one.
States that managed to slip
UK, Belgium, France, Ethiopia.
Ethiopia stands as one of the most impressive. During the 19th century, multiple colonial powers had realized that Africa served as a good source of natural resources and additional profit. Europeans had actually been in Africa since the 15th century, establishing exploration campaigns and trade posts along the coast. Eventually, each empire also...
Okay, first off, I know everyone's going to say, oh, slavery, slavery, slavery. Look at this map. You see this map right here? It's like 1/3 to 1/2 of the west coast of Africa. What you're not knowing about, and what history doesn't tell you about, is the Carthaginian Empire, which had all of the Mediterranean and the eastern part of Africa. And they were a slave trade country, nation, Islamic slave trade country or nation, that ruled the Mediterranean area for like 1,000 years. The Romans kind of kicked their ass and started pushing them back out of Sicily and Sardinia and Italy and France and Spain, but they stayed in Africa. And if you know anything about history, America had a war, and hold on, wait, it's called From the Halls of Montezuma to the Shores of Tripoli, we will fight our country's battles. See, that's the Marine Corps thing, the Halls of Tripoli. That was a battle we fought back in the mid-1800s to get rid of the remnants of the Carthaginian, Barbary, pirate Carthaginian Empire. Put it all together, people. If you know history, man, this shit reads like a book. And everyone's focused on that little bit and says, oh, that little bit of Africa is where all of slavery came from and only white people did it. Okay. Yeah, ignorance comes out of the mouths of everybody. If you hear people say that, that's because they're ignorant of the facts of true history. Luckily, I'm intelligent, and I know history. And I know that's not Africa. That is only a little bit of Africa. And trust me, those white folks didn't get more than 1 mile inland. Because the African tribes, till this day in 2022, still enslave each other. The strong tribes attack the weak tribes, take them as slaves, and sell them to other tribes. See, that's been going on as a cycle. It's been going on forever. The only thing that stopped it was a white man got involved for about 100 years, 50 years, and then we made it illegal. America, the only country in the world, the first country in the world to make slavery illegal. But all we had was this little bit right here. And it wasn't really all America. And if you look at the true history of Africa, all of that's up over there and all of the Mediterranean was controlled by the Islamic Carthaginian Empire, which was a slave trade empire. Okay, now let's get back to the story. My rant's over.
Realize realized that they would likely be competing with their neighboring European powers, and therefore needed to make some claims to the lands they wished to utilize. This prompted a period generally referred to as the Scramble for Africa. When the scramble began, Europeans had already reached the continent.
See, all this area here is a lot bigger than that small area there. And for about 20 miles inland, all the way around, at the time this happened, 1500s, was controlled by the Carthaginian Empire, and they were active slave traders.
Driven by financial and political reasons, the European leaders knew that it would only be a matter of time before war would break out between them if some type of deal was not made as to who would control which parts of the continent. 13 European nations met with each other and the United States for the Berlin Conference. The conference began on November 15, 1884, and didn't end until February 26, 1885, and resulted in the subsequent Berlin Act. The region of modern-day Congo that had already been occupied by the Belgians was confirmed to be under Belgian possession. Areas of free trade for all was set up around the Niger and Congo rivers and the Congo Basin and Lake Malawi, and it was agreed that any European entity who took land along the African coast would have to inform the other powers of this action. Now, the door was open for any and all of these imperial powers to start taking over the continent.
Except
Italy
for there, Ethiopia.
Ethiopia after beginning to establish what would become its Eritrean colony. Moving to expand this colony more, the Italians sent their special corps of Africa into the port town of Massawa, was at the time under the authority of the Ethiopian Empire in 1887. The latter initially sent a warning to the Italian officials that they were in violation of a treaty that had been signed between Ethiopia, known then as Abyssinia, Britain, and Egypt. But the warning was not heeded. Instead, Italy decided to double down and began to prepare for a battle at the Sahati fortification with 167 Italian troops alongside 1,000 locals. Man, look at this.
Yeah, that's what they don't tell you. And
the town's governor,
to this day, the problems that Ethiopia has with Egypt, Ethiopia basically told Egypt, hey, you want a war? Bring it. We're not scared of war. We've kicked people's butts for centuries. Bigger countries than us and bigger countries than Egypt. And I was so proud when I heard the Ethiopian government say, oh, you want a war? Bring it. We'll kick your ass. Okay, now let's get back to the show. The commercial's over.
Ras Alula Ngida was not even slightly tolerant of this move and decided to outright attack the fortification and its inhabitants. This risky decision resulted in a tragic number of casualties for the Ethiopians, with only a few Italians being injured and none killed. The attacking troops had been no match for the garrison's cannon and rifles, and were shortly forced to retreat, while some still remained alive. Still, the Italians were now low on ammunition, and further felt need for reinforcements, which resulted in about 550 additional troops being sent to the fortification. Thanks to his spies, Ras Alula was given a heads up and quickly gathered a fresh army to march back to the garrison before the reinforcements could arrive. This time, the Ethiopians greatly outnumbered the Italians, who still had superior weaponry but low ammunition. The battle raged on for a few hours before the ammo finally ran out, and the Ethiopians routed their enemies, almost wiping them out entirely. This considerably angered the surviving Italians and their authorities, which turns the newfound war into not only a political struggle, but also a personal vendetta. Now, at the end of January, Italy voted to send a massive new force back to Eritrea to avenge their recent defeat, while the Ethiopian Emperor, Yohannes IV, decided to pull his troops out of the area for the time being. This ended up being a wise move, as the Italians were suddenly plagued by disease and forced to return home by March. The rest of the year was marked by a period of shady politics and back-and-forth alliances. The Italians hoped to bribe the rivals of Johannes into partnerships with them, while the emperor himself looked to maintain unity within the region so he would have support against the invading threat. Ultimately, with the death of Johannes as he fought elsewhere against the maddest Sudanese threat, the Italians found some degree of success, as the monarch was succeeded by Menelik of Shiva, whom they had previously formed an alliance with. This brought about the treaty in which Italy's new possessions throughout the establishment of Italian Eritrea were recognized by the Ethiopian Empire. Still, though Ethiopia did lose some of the territories it had previously claimed, Ethiopia itself was yet to be touched by Italy's colonial hand. This was not the end of Italy versus Ethiopia, though. And Europe had surely not given up so easily on colonizing the remaining African free states. In fact, Italy at this point actually believed Ethiopia to be an Italian protectorate via the Witchell Treaty. In the Italian translation, this clause had been quite clear, but for some reason, in the Amharic translation, it was not, and instead seemed to confirm Ethiopia's full autonomy. The Italians claimed that Menelik surely knew he was signing a modified copy of the treaty, but that doesn't appear to be the case, as he had sent letters to both Germany and Britain in 1889 and was only informed by them that he could not have diplomatic relations with any European power aside from Italy due to the rules established back at the Berlin Conference. This prompted newfound tensions between Italy and its supposed protectorate as Menelik denounced the hidden clause of the treaty and worked to consolidate his own power throughout Ethiopia. This ushered in a new era of Ethiopian nationalism, partly fueled by a widespread anti-Italy sentiment, but also through the unity encouraged by the new emperor. When Italy began to seize small territories around the Ethiopian-Eritrean border, they expected some of Menelik's rivals to join their campaign and fight against him, but instead, they all rushed to the emperor's side. This time, Italy's strategy to divide and conquer quickly crumbled, as the Ethiopians, regardless of previous internal feuds, were determined to unite and maintain their independence from the Europeans. Ironically, Menelik was also now better equipped thanks to the Europeans. The Italians had provided some weaponry to rivals of the crown, including Menelik himself prior to Johannes' death, that they expected would be used against the Ethiopian authority, in addition to further military supplies from France and Britain, who hoped to keep Italy's expansion in check. When a new war finally broke out between Italy and Ethiopia, the fresh nationalism and unity of the latter would eventually prove itself to be the key to victory. Though some military aid was given from Russia, it was the joint efforts of the Ethiopians that eventually defeated the Italians at the Battle of Adwa. Following this decisive clash, the Treaty of Addis Ababa was signed in October of 1896 and forced the Italians to recognize Ethiopian sovereignty. The aftermath of these events, and the impressive nature in which Ethiopia had proven itself as an independent nation, strengthened its ties with Russia and prompted both Britain and France to spark friendlier relations. This played a significant role in the safety of Ethiopia's sovereignty.
Just a little history lesson. I hope the Egyptian government watches this, because they obviously don't know history. Ethiopia will not be conquered, and it is their day. The Gerd Dam will be completed. It will bring electricity to half their nation. They will quit using elephant dung to keep themselves warm in the wintertime. They'll actually increase their level of society. They will be able to sell power. They will become a great nation, as they should be, as they have been, keeping their sovereignty. As you saw that map, Egypt was taken over because, well, they don't, care about their nationality. They actually sold out a long time ago. So they don't need any. They get what water comes down from the White Nile. And that's all they should have. That, and they should be beholden to Ethiopia. Anyhow, you guys have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed this little history lesson. This is old stuff for me. I learned this fucking decades ago, but it's interesting watching it again, bringing it to people who never knew the history of Africa and how important it is. I know you're saying, it's not important. Yeah, it's more important than you think, and you will find out in the future why. You guys have a great day.